I'll stay
This
here.
morning enjoyed.
You can take this.
Ingo's presentation. Ingo does a one-day short course on marketing analytics, even on that course, sometimes you can't fit everything in. So
I'm getting better.
and Ingo turns up today because I owe him some money. Ingo's been one of my good partners recently in doing an in-house for a telco. We spent how many cohorts did we do? 3 cohorts or something. It was a big, long, drawn-out affair, but I'm pretty happy with what Ingo did. But Ingo, thanks on behalf of us all this morning for coming along. You're staying for lunch, fantastic.
The price is right.
And I'd like to introduce Bhuvan. Bhuvan, in fact, has been here during the morning. And before he arrived here at 10:30, he was at another part of UTS in our design, architecture and building, because he's been doing a little bit of work there on Agile and analytics. And so Bhuvan, thanks for coming along today. A little bit of background here on Bhuvan. Bhuvan's doing, in fact, a one-day program for us at the end of this month, which is that same title, I think, Big Data Strategies for Agile Business, and that's what you're going to talk about today.
Yep. And
you're going to go through to lunchtime about 12:30.
Yep.
So look, enjoy your time ahead with Bhuvan, and Bhuvan, thanks again for coming along.
That's cool.
Thank you. Thanks. And we've got your PowerPoint here, so. And this is Anand. Anand is my right-hand, left-hand person who puts everything together. So enjoy.
Okay, good morning. It's still morning. And in the 38 minutes that are remaining, because it doesn't matter when you start, you must finish on time. My friend, because I have sat and listened to him for one full day. If someone listens to you for one full day, they are your friend. So I can occasionally pass it. This was the title that Colin and I decided on, mainly because the angle that I'm taking to these wonderful data analytics is a very businessy angle. And I've done a fair bit of work now for almost 2 years in this space, and I will share very briefly that work with you. And it has been all industrial work, although I am a visiting faculty at least 3 universities here, and very proud UTS alumni. But at the same time, I enjoy going out and doing work with the industry. So that is the angle that I'm taking. My resume, in case you want to offer me a job. Perhaps for the last 2 decades, I've been looking for a job. So it's always good to put up your profile. This particular work, The Art of Agile Practice, is probably the best book written in this world after Harry Potter. If I had written it before Harry Potter, I would be retired. But the idea here is to focus on Agile as not a software development method, which is where it has come about, so Scrum and XP and Lean and so on, but to see if we can apply these principles in business, to see if agility rather than agile can be used to change the way we look at business. And guess what? Almost all decision making in business is, people who are trying to take decisions are saying, give me the facts, give me the data, and obviously the analytics on top of the data. So if Westpac is going to change one of its products and going to come up with a new product for, say, mobile banking, the decision-making process for that product will start 2, 3, 4, 5 years beforehand. Or if AMP is trying to implement a new mortgage origination and loan application product, 3 to 5 years beforehand. And I'm giving you examples where I have been personally involved in providing consulting to these organizations. Can they afford a lead time of 3 to 5 years? And obviously the answer is no. In comes analytics, in comes big data, in comes the ability to put together facts that decision makers can use together with their intuition to decide which products, which services, in case of airlines, not only which destinations, but what's the capacity of the flight, how many seats to go free, all sorts of interesting decision making. And that is business agility. If we move out of the sellers of Scrum and XP, we really find that agility has an immense application in business, enabling decision makers to take decisions fast based on hard facts, analytics, marketing analytics that Dr. Ingo is talking about, or various other kinds, NPS. Now, how wonderful is NPS when you walk into a Combank or Westpac branch and on a little A4 sheet, handwritten on the door, stuck with glue tack, is a request. Please vote our branch as the best branch, that you will recommend our branch as the best branch, not just our bank. Net Promoter Score, you must have heard of that. And all the psychologists have come about saying, if I vote between 1 and 6, I'm a detractor. And if I vote 7 and 8, I'm neutral. And if I vote 9 and 10, I, the customer, will recommend to another friend, hey, that's a great bank or airline or hospital. So that's where we are really in terms of the business context or the business angle to what we are seeing big data. And Ingo is absolutely right, and so is perhaps every speaker here who says it's not new. Data mining has been the word, data warehouse has been the word. Someone has now coined data lake, and I'm told that I shouldn't use data lake without acknowledging the person, and I'm forgetting who that person is. Perhaps we might come up with data ocean, who knows? But the idea is to see if big data can add value to business. That is the focus. And everything else follows from it. I'll go slightly faster than how I would usually go. So when it comes to business, when it comes to a board of directors, and in fact, the reason I'm wearing a suit and tie is not because I was at DAB, but because I was at Rabobank this morning. So I want to be respectful to all of you. At lunchtime, I will remove my tie. But the idea is, they are saying hard facts, data. What's the value that all this drama of agile and composite agile and big data is going to add to our bottom line? So guess what? Being an academic as much as being a consultant, I did a bit of work and included a couple of researchers along with me, and we created what we consider as a framework. And another friendly academic told me never to use the words framework, taxonomy, strategy. I said, there's nothing else left. So everything that we do comes under these 3 or 4 keywords. So I am going to talk about a framework. And the background for that framework comes from these two words that actually are distinct from each other. One is all the wonderful ability to analyze data, and we heard about marketing analytics, about that wine example and so on. But if you punch in Big Data Framework in Uncle Google, I started calling him Uncle Google, my Indian nature. The answers you will get is Hadoop is a great framework for big data. And you try and present to a board of directors, Hadoop is a great framework. The first question, and this is personal experience, is what the hell is Hadoop? So here we are in terms of the entire framework, which is million rows and billion columns, because that's how Google is operating, or Amazon is operating, or Yahoo is operating. And the story of Doug Cuttings and his little kid playing with a yellow elephant and calling it Hadoop leads us into Hadoop distributed file systems, leads us into the discussions on mappers and reducers and key value pairs and no SQL. It was actually no SQL, and now it has resulted in not only SQL databases. So there is a phenomenal amount of material, training courses, technology installations, experimentation in both these spaces. But when it comes to that board of director decision making, they either don't understand, they don't want to understand, they want a strategic approach that will add value to their business. That's the way that's the angle that I and my friends at Method Science are working on. So we are seeing net promoter score, time series analysis, nonlinear neural networks, machine generated data, all of these analytics and lot more are going to feed in to this cube. And then Hadoop and MapReduce and corresponding languages like Pig and Pig Latin, NoSQL databases, HBase, Hive, and quite a few actually. MongoDB stands for Humongous DB. And then of course the existing SQL and transactional. All of this is falling under the technology umbrella, which is feeding into the queue. And what we are really looking for is how it's going to add value to business, how it is going to enable business decision makers to decide which product, which service to come up with or discontinue, and so on. And there's a lot more here. So again, I'm not able to go into the details of each of them, but these are really strategic decision-making functions of a business, supported by analytics and supported by technology. And someone has rightly said the world is a cube. Excel with third dimension is nothing but this universe. So I suppose putting a cube together is not a bad idea. Now this is so nice. How much time we have? 3 days? Around 3 days. But it is a 3-day discussion that I have had in the past, and I do have a A0 printout of this particular slide, and it has been heavily criticized and equally loved, and you're welcome to do both. And please don't worry if you can't read little bits. That's not because you are getting old. I think everybody in this room is quite young, but because it is trying to show how a medium to large organization would start adopting big data in a strategic manner. The idea is not to make it complex, and in fact the previous Q is really what this is. And I do have boxes around all these little nitty-gritties that I have shown here to highlight to a large bank or a large airline or a large hospital what factors they need to consider when they say we are doing big data. If you are doing analytics, you are doing big data, but it's not comprehensive, it's not holistic. If you have a single node, multi-node is now fashionable. Have a multi-node installation of Hadoop. Apache Hadoop, freely downloadable. You can put it on your laptop. You can say I'm doing big data. But a business cannot do big data with these experiments. And wearing my academic hat, it's absolutely great to have students, senior students, create a Hadoop installation and try and experiment with data. But the data they download, publicly available data, which is not going to help them when they go out in the industry necessarily. And again, Ingo mentioned about primary and secondary data. Almost all experimentation right now in big data technologies with the analytics is secondary data. And what we are looking for, what businesses are looking for is, what should I collect? What should I store? Why should I store it? Do I keep adding to the haystack? If the base is cracked, everything else will be cracked. But we need direction. So this framework, which actually I have submitted to a competitive awards feature happening in Australia. And again, I'm carrying my A0 sheet, and Officeworks is making a bit of money on me, because every time I change it, I have to print it A0. But the reason I'm sticking to this is because it gives me a bird's eye view, something then I can break down. So let me take you through some of the headings here. First, I'm talking about value. With big data, I can do almost anything. I can produce, you mentioned about, arriving at that last decision point. Computer will spew out something that you can use to take decision. But what's the value around it? And because of my background in Agile, and I've been involved with Agile, I should honestly say since 1995, when Mike Beadle and Ken Schwaber presented their wonderful Scrum methodology in Austin, Texas, and not many people went to listen to that presentation. And today, if you talk about Agile, everybody is talking about Agile. And in 2001, around that time, the gurus of software development came up with the Agile Manifesto. What I have extracted out of that for business is some of these wonderful values. This is what a business is looking for when they say we want to do big data. These are some of the roles, and now chief data scientist, everybody is a chief data scientist on LinkedIn, or CDO, chief data officer. But data science is becoming a word in its own right, and there are a few other roles that I have talked about, but also a coach and a mentor, because we don't have project managers and we don't have task managers when we are bringing in Agile principles. Business decisions with the SWOT analysis to start with, the data, which includes volume, velocity, veracity, you name the good V's of big data. I have got my technology framework, and then I've got my extract, transform, and load, and all the technologies associated with that. Then I'm talking about user experience, and this particular little clip art is Google Analytics. If I can move my analytics to the cloud, which is thinking in macro terms, not presenting to the board of directors of a company, I'm thinking industry-wide, then the little coffee shop downstairs can make use of it to find out how many cups of coffee will be sold this morning. And the normal statistics would be go back to 1 year worth of data entry and see if today they're going to sell 35 cups of coffee or 350. But last year, this time, this day was not as glorious as it is today. Maybe it was raining. You mentioned about the rains 2 weeks ago, when actually I had to finish my course at 4:30 for safety reasons. UTS was closing down at 4:30. Now next year on that same day in April, we will have a day like this, and we should still close down at 4:30, I think, for other reasons. So can we bring in weather data on the cloud to provide analytics to a coffee shop downstairs? I think we can. Can we bring in stock market data? If the stocks are rising high, people are more happy. Maybe they will buy the wine that Ingo is talking about rather than coffee, but we can start the morning with a cup of coffee. I have a friend who used to work for John Fairfax for 35 years, maybe even more. And he was saying, Bhuvan, all this big data stuff you're talking about, 20 years back, we used to do analytics to figure out if the newspaper agent in Waitara next to Hornsby should be delivered 220 newspapers or 75 newspapers, and we used to get it right to almost 5 copies. Now that's business decision making, and that's what we are talking about here. The NPS, the marketing analytics, the sentiment analytics, the wonderful input that we are taking is all there to help us figure out how business can make good use of it, not just money. Then comes what I have called TESP, test and SMAC. So TESP is technology, economy, sociology, and process, TESP. And whenever a adoption transformation takes place, we need these 4 dimensions in balance. And I've got some of the bits that I'm discussing here full on slides, so I'll show them to you as well. And the other is the technology, SMAC stack. The keyword SMAC stack: social, mobile, then analytics and cloud. Looks like you can't really isolate one technology from the other. So social and mobile for input, cloud for storage and sharing, and analytics for analytics. And then when you bring them all together, we have these interesting situation of a coffee shop or a restaurant, a small takeaway restaurant or a fine dining restaurant, making use of big data analytics to take business decisions. And finally here, something that does get ignored and then comes a little later in all technology and process revolutions is people and upskilling of people. So again, McKinsey report, there is a bit of Gartner, I think, somewhere, which is talking about the shortages in big data skills. And of course, universities are working hard to fill that gap, but it takes its own sweet time, and we have got an approach here which is mapped to CFIA. If you have come across CFIA, Skills Framework for Information Age, UK-based skills framework that is also being quite popular in Australia. So that's the overall approach in terms of the building blocks, then in terms of inputs and outputs, in terms of specific conditions within organizations, including whether you are a small, medium or large company, whether you are a product or a service company, and of course whether you are a local or a global company, and then all of that coming together as a mash. And then the agile practices. So something like a daily stand-up or a showcasing or prioritization and estimation has immense value to offer to a business, not just to develop a piece of software. So that's what we have worked on. We have created a draft BD Fab manifesto. Everything has to be a manifesto, right? Including how manifesto to send kids to school in kindergarten. So we have a manifesto of our own, which of course will be refined as we go along. There is a business strategy cube, and then there is the adoption process. So the next slide contains a bit more detail on this adoption process. So that's your overall framework with a lot of thinking that has gone behind it. We are working towards a tool support if we can, but that's not the goal. Tool support will be good to have. So what I have here is a adoption framework. I have created these 12, I should say, not I, but we, I and my fellow researchers and practitioners, that these are the areas that an organization needs to look at when it says we want to use big data. It won't be just a simple statement like we want to use big data. So this is the adoption process. It's iterative. There is again a lot of thinking going on. We can chat offline about it. And technologies are actually playing a relatively smaller role than most approaches to big data would make us believe. We also have our metrics. We have also included sustainability in this 12 swim lane approach to adoption. And the typical understanding is that this might take between 1 and 3 years, but 1 year is more realistic, and perhaps the board has a patience for only 1 year. One of these, so if I go back here and I show this to you as a user experience and operational excellence framework, or sub-framework if you like, what we have done in terms of user experience is make use of or encourage the businesses to think of the phenomenal amount of data that is generated by people, you and I, chatting on Facebook about our experiences of flying Qantas, for example. So when we say T0 to T1, most of the focus, traditional focus on collecting data, on analyzing data has been T0, T1. You come to my website, Qantas, my NRMA, my Westpac, and I collect data on how you are, including Amazon, how you are behaving, your buying patterns, your whatever actions you are doing. But guess what? If an airline loses my bag in this stone age, I'm later going to complain to the airline. First thing I'll do is go on my Facebook page and say, flight ABC, airline XYZ, lost my bag. And guess all of you are my friends, and you go like. And then next time when you're buying a ticket from here to Hobart comes to mind because that's where I'm going tomorrow. It's freezing. You will say, Bhuvan had posted that airline lost the bag. I won't go for that airline. And guess what? With all the analytics that an airline is doing between time T0 and T1, it doesn't even come to know unless it goes to time T minus 1 or time T plus 1, that something is going on out there. And that's where Google Analytics is providing its value by saying, we will give you data about your customers. And we'll tell you what they are talking about in terms of your product, your company. And then here, of course, comes the moment of reflection. I fly Qantas, it takes me to Hobart, it provides me with nice vegetarian meal, and I and my wife, we are very, very happy. And guess what? Instead of complimenting Qantas, I go to my Facebook page and I say, oh, and all of you go like. So next time when you are buying a ticket to fly your family, you remember what I had said, Qantas doesn't come to know. Big data opens up the opportunity to analyze what customers are thinking without putting that A4 sheet handwritten, please come to our website and give us a score of 9 or 10. That is normal analytics, good to have, not sufficient in the big data space. So I'm encouraging you to think or appreciate the fact that big data opens up opportunities beyond the time frame in which the customer is in contact with us. And a bit of chat on social, mobile, analytics and cloud. Keith Sheringham and I have done a fair bit of work, and you can see it was done 4 or 5 years back now. But still holding strong in terms of how SMAC and big data are related. I have a couple of more slides where I can take you into more detail. This is my conceptual, very, very basic understanding of how SMAC is operating. And I have started calling this SOMO because it's impossible for me to separate social and mobile. SOMO, that's my input mechanism, that's my dashboard, that's my output. When it comes to analytics, it is correlations, it is trying to associate two seemingly unrelated pieces of data. And then this and cloud are also getting together, as I already mentioned to you about a coffee shop making use of big data analytics. A coffee shop downstairs has no muscle to store weather data and stock market data in any shape or form. But if it is cloud-based analytics, it has the potential to make use of it. And then if a coffee shop or a restaurant can make use of it, imagine the value it can add, including to something like UTS, which is continuously trying to analyze where are the students. Are they in here or in India or in China? How are they going to come here? What happens to the local students? All those analytics. Okay, like Ingo, I'm going to go a bit faster because I do want to cover a couple of interesting points. In terms of the correlations that I mentioned and the ability of the cloud to enable those correlations, I came across an absolutely fascinating book. It is by Dr. James Ricard. the American guy, so forgive me, but the title is The Death of Money. If he was an Indian guy, he would have said, let's put money to sleep or something like that. But the book is, it's a business book. It's a banking, it's a book about the financial system globally. Death of Money, James Ricard. And in the, I think the second or the third chapter, I'm forgetting now, but in the first quarter of the book, he is talking about how he was invited by the CIA and how he and his colleagues made use of big data analytics, and he's actually using the word big data analytics. First, going back and correlating the stock market behavior and 9/11. And he nicely explains how the puts were selling 3 days before 9/11. And when I read that, like, the hair on my body was standing. It was so fascinating to see how he is making, he and his team, making use of technology, making use of big data analytics in a very strategic manner to say, look at these puts, look at the American Airlines puts, and look at the United Airlines puts. And people had purchased those puts, and as probably most of you know, put is the right to sell a share at a certain price. So his inferences were spot on in that those who had purchased those puts, and the spike 3 days and 2 days before 9/11 in terms of the puts was so high. Why are people buying puts? They were, I don't know how many, anyway, I don't want to go in the actual event itself because it does hurt. But the fact that puts were purchased were correlated to what was going to happen. Something was going to happen to these two airlines. And guess what? Within, I think, whatever, 2-3 years or whatever it was, at night, 2 o'clock, James Ricard is ringing all his friends in CIA and a few other friends, and he's saying, look at the London stock market, and look at the way it's behaving. And guess what? Next day morning, the London tube bombing happened. So it was a big plus for the work that he had done and his colleagues had done to correlate something as far remote from the flight of a plane and the stock market, brought them closer. Everything, the data is, everything is analyzed and stored and updated on the cloud. And of course, something like a Hadoop distributed file system makes it possible, because you can't go through million rows and billion columns. And funny, we are still talking about million rows and billion columns. Whereas when we talk about big data in a strategic manner, we want to see the evening news of Mr. Abbott or Mr. Obama or Mr. Modi, and how many times they smile. Can we analyze a 20-minute video or a 10-minute video to find out how many times they smiled or how many times they were looking sad? And Sony has already put out a camera. I think Canon does the same. It will only click if you smile. That means face recognition features are already there. What that camera is doing is converting facial features with a database which says, when Bhuvan smiles, he has a big smile, but when somebody else, his friend smiles, he just has a little twitch. We are talking about converting unstructured data, a piece of video. We are talking about a graphic image and converting that into rows and columns. Of course, if we want to do analytics, we need rows and columns, I understand that. But the input data is not always in rows and columns. Yes, of course, I'm carrying my phone with me and it has got a GPS with it, and I have set my location on, and the phone is transmitting data, and Optus knows and Google knows and my wife knows where I am. Machine generated data. We still have these very interesting, fascinating opportunities to work through from unstructured to structure, the time it takes, the grunt it needs, and from structure to analytics. To say, today, Mr. Obama's smile 17 times in 20 minutes, something is going to happen, something good, something positive, whatever it might be. So now for the next 4.5 minutes, I've done this fair bit of work which I showed you, the book. Let me show it again for my sake. Available at author's price in case you are interested. I've paid my debt to my publisher by doing that. But what we have argued for is when we are trying to bring Agile in practice, really Scrum and extreme programming are playing a much less role than the value Agile brings to business. And that has been our argument. And in fact, this presentation and the one day that I'm doing on 26th May, I think it is, it's all going into another book that I'm writing with the same publisher, CRC Press, to submit in the next 6 months. The title is exactly the same as today's presentation, Big Data Strategies for Agile Business. And we have defined agility, which is actually not very easy to do, but we have tried to come up with what we consider as business agility, and that's basically the swiftness with which a business can take decisions. So when Dr. James Ricard is figuring out a erratic or a suspicious stock market behavior at 2 a.m. in the morning, in the middle of the night, how much time he has, how much time the security agencies have to make sure that the public is protected next morning? Very, very short amount of time. And of course that's security domain, which is not my expertise, but if you look at business domain, the situation is not much different. Should we run a flight or cancel a flight? You know, how many beds we need in Westmead Hospital? I mean, I do a fair bit of Rotary work, Rotary children's work, and just last year, Westmead Hospital's ICU, which used to cost $2,500, is now going to cost $4,500 overnight, based on whatever decisions the governments are taking. Again, mine is not a political talk, but how does that impact a child who has a major problem, somewhere in a country where the medical facilities are not there? The decision making has to be fast, and big data, we hope, will enhance that decision making right from these hospitals and airlines through to coffee shops and restaurants. Bit of chat on SMAC, bit of material on how each of these layers of technology are going to impact both internal and external decision making, and then of course they are all in a mesh. And then I've done a fair bit of work in both SMAC and Agile. This is all my Cutter work. Cutter is a Boston-based publication, and I've done a fair bit of writing with them over the last 10 years, including in Agile. And I'm right now finishing Psychology of Agile 2, and it's all going to move into big data space in the next 1 to 2 years. Just showing my book again. And what is it that I have put in a capsule for you? That business is interested in the value, the strategic value of big data. Business, in fact, the businesses that I'm dealing with, the decision makers don't even understand fully what is Hadoop. And perhaps they do understand a bit of marketing analytics and sentiment analytics and NPS, but that too is changing the way it is being used with the available technologies. So I have really focused on the insights or the framework for those insights, and that this particular ecosystem provides wonderful opportunities to come up with these decision-making analytics. A very simple example is HBase, which is a columnar database which is under the not only SQL umbrella. When we talk about rows and columns, and in fact I have presented this in a couple of full-on MBA courses, and I asked my master students this question: how does the fact that HBase is a columnar database affect your business decision making? And it was an interesting question, and in a couple of sentences I'll say, if a branch in a bank needs the control totals on the total amount of transactions they have done, In the traditional SQL approaches, they will have to read all the rows of all the transactions and sum up the debits and credits. Million rows, billion columns. In NoSQL databases, in HBase, you read the column. You read only the debit column and the credit column, not the rows. How fascinating is that? So with one read for debits and one read for credits, you are coming up with the end of day totals for a branch or number of branches or for the bank. So from a technology viewpoint, you can always say, I can read a million columns, or I can read 10,000, sorry, I can read a million rows, or I can read 10,000 rows and come up with the total. But from that business viewpoint, just being able to read two columns, because HBase is a columnar database rather than a row-based database, makes the world of difference. How? Because now the branch manager doesn't have to wait for end of day. Now every hour or every minute, if he or she wishes, on his or her tabloid or handheld phone, he is getting a chart which says, my branch, so many debits, so many credits. Fascinating stuff. And then of course, SmackStack enables it, and composite agile method and strategy, which is really saying, pure agile as software development is not what we are looking for. We are looking at composite agile, which is both planned and agile approaches. It's not just a method, but is in itself a strategic approach. Some references, as all academics do. This was my interview last year in New York. It's only about 3 minutes, but I enjoyed it. It was all on big data. And maybe this is a nice quote, technology is our creation, we were created by technology, so let's use it for healing. At the most fundamental level, we are not just connected, but we are inseparable. Thank you very much.
Bhuvan, thank you very much. Bhuvan, I think this is your first time you presented here at this event.
Yes.
Bhuvan is one of the presenters that is kind enough to come along to the presentations we have in our Advanced Data Analytics course. From time to time, and the next one of these courses is happening in July, and so we get different presenters. And Bhuvan's coming back again because I know this audience is interested, and we're interested in what happens in the organisations, and the agility in big data and managing analytics within your organisation. We think it's important. You might be here as an individual today, but you're probably here from an organisation. So Bhuvan's an expert in this area. So we are keen to make sure we give a widespread coverage of the needs of organisations, data mining, agility, marketing. So it's lunchtime. I hope you've enjoyed this morning. This afternoon we've got a few surprises for you. We're linking in with one of our presenters out of London, so he's getting up early. He'll probably be there in his pyjamas at 6:30 in the morning, but he's going to come on about 3:30, 3:30 after afternoon tea. But we've got a couple of other presenters before that, so please join us for lunch. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Peter.